Picture the dust. The smell of sulfur and wet earth. It is May 29, 1453. You are standing on the legendary Theodosian walls of Constantinople, looking down at an ocean of 80,000 Ottoman soldiers. For 53 days, the massive bronze cannon of Sultan Mehmed II has blasted these ancient stones. A breach opens. The Janissaries charge, ready to claim the crown jewel of the Christian world. In our history, this is the moment the Middle Ages ended. The city fell. The Roman Empire gasped its last breath. But today, we change one detail. As the Ottoman vanguard surges toward the shattered gate, a sudden, desperate counterattack led by Emperor Constantine XI holds the line. The Genoese commander, Giustiniani, is wounded but refuses to abandon the field. Inspired by his bravery, the defenders fight with the fury of ghosts. The breach is plugged. Night falls. The Ottoman assault collapses in exhaustion. Mehmed, facing a mutiny from his weary troops, orders a retreat. The siege is lifted. Constantinople has survived. But survival is only the beginning of a massive domino effect that will rewrite the global map. In the immediate aftermath, the world gasps. The legendary city of Constantine, though battered and bankrupt, remains a Christian stronghold. But here is the twist. The Byzantine Empire is no longer an empire. It is a single, heavily fortified city-state. Yet, its mere survival changes everything for its neighbors. To the west, the European powers breathe a sigh of relief. But to the east, the rising Ottoman Empire is forced to pivot. Blocked from a quick conquest of Europe, Sultan Mehmed turns his eyes toward the south and east, conquering Persia and consolidating his grip over the Middle East. The Ottomans do not become the direct threat to Central Europe we remember. There is no siege of Vienna. Hungary and Poland remain secure. But the biggest wave of this butterfly effect. It happens on the open ocean. Think about why Spain and Portugal funded dangerous voyages into the dark Atlantic in the late 15th century. They were desperate. When the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, they seized control of the Silk Road. They taxed, restricted, and controlled the flow of spices, silk, and gold from Asia. Europe was suffocating. To survive, they had to bypass the Middle East entirely. They had to sail west. But now, the gateway to the east remains open. With Constantinople still functioning as a Christian-friendly trading hub, the traditional overland trade routes remain viable. Sure, the Venetians and Byzantines charge their fees, but it is a system Europe understands. There is no desperate scramble to find a sea route to India. So, imagine the year 1492. In our timeline, Christopher Columbus is sailing the ocean blue, funded by a Spanish crown desperate to beat the Portuguese to Asia. But in this alternate timeline, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella look at Columbus's wild proposal to sail into the empty Atlantic and they laugh. Why risk treasury gold on a suicidal voyage across an endless ocean when the trade caravans are still arriving safely in Constantinople? Columbus is rejected. The ships are never built. The age of discovery is delayed, by decades, perhaps even a century. But wait. The delay of the Atlantic voyage has massive, unintended consequences for the Americas. For decades, the Aztec and Inca empires continue to grow, build, and fight without European interference. They have more time. Time to develop technologies, time to consolidate their empires, time to perhaps even encounter each other. When Europeans finally do cross the Atlantic, perhaps in the mid-1600s, driven by sheer curiosity rather than trade desperation, they do not find a fractured continent easily conquered by steel and smallpox. They find powerful, unified empires. The conquest of the Americas becomes an impossible task. Meanwhile, back in Europe, the Renaissance takes a bizarre turn. In our world, the fall of Constantinople sent a wave of Greek scholars. Fleeing to Italy, carrying ancient texts that sparked the rebirth of art, science, and philosophy. But if the city never falls, those scholars stay. Constantinople remains the intellectual capital of the Western world. Italy's city-states do not experience the same sudden explosion of classical knowledge. Instead, the intellectual heart of the world remains split. The West remains more medieval, while the East continues to guard the secrets of the ancient Greeks and Romans. And what of the city itself? As the centuries roll on, Constantinople becomes a fascinating anomaly. A Christian island in an Islamic sea. It survives by playing its neighbors against each other. It becomes a city of spies, diplomats, and merchants. A neutral ground where East meets West. Picture a 19th century Constantinople, its ancient walls retrofitted with steam-powered defense cannons, its harbors filled with coal-burning ironclads, yet still ruled by a Roman emperor tracing his lineage back to Augustus. It is a beautiful, fragile world. A world where the Americas remain untamed by Europe. A world where the Middle Ages lingered for another century. All because a single wall held on a dusty May morning. If you could travel to this alternate world, what is the first place you would visit? The steam-powered docks of Christian Byzantium, or a sovereign Aztec capital? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to keep exploring the infinite paths of history, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Until next time, keep wondering.